Hello everybody and welcome to the very first Manliness Venture. The goal of this channel is to inspire more men to live manly lives. The goal is also for women to look for these qualities that we're going to talk about in the men in their lives, and also to hold the men in their lives to a higher standard than what our society is doing right now. So the first thing we're going to start with is with the logo. Why did I pick the logo? You can see a top hat and you can see a sword. First off, the top hat. The top hat is clearly recognizable. Everybody in our society, I feel like in the Western world, knows what a top hat is. And that's because it's been so popular. So it started in 1797, and the first person who created it, when he wore it out to the street, there was such a ruckus that he was brought into court because the officer said that he was disturbing the peace and the public order.
Sorry, officer, I didn't know I couldn't do that.
This arrest, as you can imagine, made the news. The newspaper was basically saying the officer and the courts are way overreacting. There's no reason for all of this. It's just a hat. With that bit of marketing, the hat became popular. And so more and more men started wearing this. The hat was even eventually worn by Prince Albert of England. And that's when it became really, really popular. And because it became really, really popular, whenever we look to gentlemen of the past, especially between the 1800s to even the 1930s, people wore these hats for all sorts of occasions. Nowadays, it's not as common. But even President Kennedy wore it for his inauguration ceremony. So until recently, it was still used for formal occasions. To me, this hat brings an image of a gentleman, of a man who knows how to carry himself. These hats, they were started to make a statement. The men in these hats feel taller, feel more handsome, feel more confident, and even, suave or classy. And that's how and why it became so popular with Western men throughout the 1800s. All this to say that part of being a man is your image, is how you present yourself to the world. Many men say that doesn't matter, but it does matter. And that's why these men from long ago wore these hats and dressed so well. And so that's part of being a man, is how you present yourself. If you look at Henry Cavill and the way that he dresses, for example, he's a gentleman.
Is that so?
Yes, that's so.
So that is only one part of being a gentleman. That's why I picked the top hat. But now onto the sword. That sword, if you didn't recognize it, is a gladius, from where we get the name gladiator. Now, gladius in Latin just means sword. These swords were first used by the Spaniards, the people in the Iberian Peninsula, who are now we call them Spaniards. They were excellent fighters, so much so that they even earned the respect of the conquering Romans, who would eventually adopt this sword. And I believe Russell Crowe's character Maximus, he's a Spaniard, as kind of an homage to how great of fighters the Spaniards actually were.
Spaniard.
The Romans were incredibly good at adapting technologies for their own use and for their own army. So they were impressed by the way that the Spaniards fought, and they were impressed by the sword that they called gladius. Beginning in the 3rd century, men started to incorporate this into their personal arsenal because, armies back then, it wasn't, everybody gets issued a sword. You would buy and bring your own sword. And so more and more the swords started to become popular. But this sword is one of the most important swords in history. You can see the map of the Roman Empire before the sword was used and afterwards. Now, this whole expansion wasn't just due to the sword, but technology in warfare is extremely important. And a lot of the times it wins you battles. So why was this so good for the Romans, this sword? Why was this so effective for the Romans? Well, because it was a shorter sword. The blade was between 18 and 27 inches. Because it was so short, it was perfect for their fighting style, which was close quarters. If you picture the Romans, they have that big shield, and then they go right up to the enemy, and they're blocking with that shield, and then they can take the shield and quickly stab and retreat and protect again. They can quickly maneuver the sword because it's a smaller sword. I mean, it only weighed between 1.5 to 2 pounds. And so you can imagine what advantage that was when you have that wall of shields and nothing can get to you, basically. And when you're right up against the enemy, you use that short sword to basically wreak havoc on the enemy. The sword was mainly for stabbing because it's a quicker motion than slashing, but both of its parallel edges were also sharpened, so you could also slash, and you can see this in Gladiator. So there you have it. I have those two symbols of manliness from two different eras to kind of bring together this picture of manliness, because being a man is not about how much money you make, what car you drive, what toys make you feel good about yourself, what position you're in, or however many women you sleep. That's not even manly. That's a very shallow life. But there's a reason why these warrior films speak to us. Deep inside, we have that within us to be a warrior. However, being a warrior or a strong man is also not just what manliness is all about. We need to use our strengths and the things that we're good at to serve others, to serve the community, to serve those around us, to serve our tribe. And that's where the gentleman part comes in. Because if you're just a gentleman, but you don't know how to harness that wild side, you're still lacking something. There's still something that's not there that would develop you fully. And that's what this is all about. I'm not claiming to be the manliest man out there.
Don't make that face.
But I do enjoy this part of being a man, and I want to develop it more. And I want to encourage you and others around you to do the same, because that is our drive, and I believe that that's when we will live better lives, when we're striving after these things. I want to try to help rescue some of that manliness from the past and bring it to the present to see how we can live our lives today in this day and age as manly men. And in this day and age, there's so much confusion about what manliness actually is. And so this channel is not going to be just a blog about me talking about my life or me talking about, oh, I'm so manly. This is going to be a blog about doing stuff, about learning manly skills or getting inspiration from manly characters. It's going to be about doing things that help bring back and help harness that manliness, to develop and cherish that manliness, and hopefully inspire others to do the same. So to finish off, here's a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, one of the manliest men ever. It is incredible, everything that this man did in his life. Over sentimentality, over softness, in fact, washiness and mushiness are the great dangers of this age and of this people. Unless we keep the barbarian virtues, gaining the civilized ones will be of little avail. So that's it, everybody. Next week, I'm coming out with a video to celebrate the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and I'm really excited. So I will see you next week. Man up!